Welcome everyone to another episode of Keto Chat. I am your host, Carol Freeman, certified nutritionist, registered hypnotherapist, and I'm excited today because I've got an actually in-person live interview. Dr. Westaway is here in studio, so we get to have some fun here. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, and this is Bella too, so she's a special guest co-host. So tell everyone, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Dr. Erin Westaway. I'm a naturopathic physician, and I have a private practice here in Seattle, Washington. And I've been doing family practice for years now and seeing all sorts of ages, all sorts of conditions. And I'm shifting my practice right now to focus a little bit more on fertility and actually launching an online fertility health coaching program as well for people who want to naturally get healthier and boost their fertility that way rather than necessarily going the medical route of IVF and all the hormones and that kind of stuff. So
excellent. Yeah. Really lots of work and really powerful work. So we both went to the same university, Bastyr. Yes. So take us back before. What led you to Bastyr and to become a naturopath?
That's a little bit of a long story. I'll try and give you the shortened version of it. But basically, I had some health issues growing up and was diagnosed with autoimmunity as a teenager and had some stuff before then that it kind of took a while to figure out. And then eventually was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome at a time when I've always been a learner. And so, they just said, here, go on these medications for the autoimmunity, go on this for, birth control for the polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I just went, but what's going on in my body? Why that doesn't make, that doesn't make sense to me. I happened to have the incredible fortune at the time of having a roommate in college who was actually going to school to become a midwife. And so I literally, this was like before the days of the internet research, right? So I just sat down with her medical textbooks and I read everything that I could to understand what was going on in my body. And what I found was that there was a lot that related to blood sugar control with polycystic ovarian syndrome. It wasn't just about sex hormones. And so I went back to my doctor and I was like, I read this stuff and it seems like I should be able to change my diet and, make a difference. And they just sort of looked at me like I had three heads and said like, no, just go on these pills forever.
Yeah. Food has nothing to do with that.
And by the way, you might have a hard time getting pregnant later. And I'd always imagined myself as a mom. And so I ended up going to see a naturopath. And within 2 weeks, well, first of all, she was the first doctor in my entire life, and I had seen a lot of doctors who had ever sat down with me and actually explained, like, this is how this connects to this, and, put my labs and my symptoms and all of that together. And I was like, oh, like, this is what I've been looking for all these years. And I followed the dietary advice that she gave me, and within 2 weeks, I would say 80% of all of the things that I've been struggling with for almost 20 years were 80% better.
Wow, yeah.
And I was like, wait a second. What I realized was that my health at that point was so dependent upon the practitioner that I went to see, right? And what they knew or didn't know. And I felt like, A, I wanted more people to know about more possibilities and empower people. And B, I wanted to know for myself.
Yeah.
And so I was an English major at the time.
Okay.
I was not doing the sciences. So I graduated. I taught public school for a while, which I loved. But ultimately, I just couldn't shake the bug of learning that stuff. And so I went back. I did all my pre-med requirements and ended up heading out to Bastyr. So,
are you from Seattle area originally?
No, I grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts. I went to college in Maine. So so I put everything in my car and drove out here and
you stayed. Oh well, it's such a life-changing experience. I mean, my first visit with a naturopath was very similar, whereas, regular doctor, you get, 5 minutes if you're lucky, or maybe 7. And, a naturopath that spends like 60 to 90 minutes with you in a visit and looks at you as a whole person and everything and explains things so much. It's just really life transforming to have that experience. But, some people watching may not know what a naturopath is. They might have these preconceived notions about, it's like, not a real doctor or something like that. So talk about that. Like, what is a naturopathic doctor?
So we go to school. We go to naturopathic medical schools. We have our own programs, our own accreditation board, and all of that stuff. And we do a program that's basically includes all of the biomedical sciences that an MD would get. We do clinical training, and it takes between 4 to 5, really 4 to 6 years, depending on the person and what's going on in their life, because you have to fit everything basically from conventional medical school, plus all of our extra training in herbs and homeopathy and nutrition and counseling and all of the lifestyle things that either keep people well or, out of balance, create disease. So it's a lot of training, a lot of clinical training, but ultimately I think what makes a naturopath different than other doctors is our philosophy. It's really about finding the root cause of illness, what are the obstacles to cure, and helping people unravel that to actually create wellness rather than just here's the symptom or here's the disease and here's the pill that we'll use to counter it. It's like we want to unravel that ball of yarn and help you be as well as possible for as long as possible.
Nice. Yeah, so I love that, root cause, because, conventional medicine is looking at what pill can treat the symptom, whereas naturopaths are looking at, what's out of discord in the body that we can help support it heal itself.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So it makes sense then why your focus now is on fertility, because that's where, your struggles and inspiration to take that path in the first place. So
yeah, it's interesting because, we were just talking earlier, I'm a Sagittarius, and so I get interested in so many things. And so I loved doing family practice for a while because I got to see all of the variety and all of that stuff. But I've been thinking so much lately about just like, where do I want that impact to be, and who are the clients that I just really love working with. I think when a couple is trying to get pregnant, they're often really motivated to make some great positive changes in their life. And so it's just this amazing opportunity to help not only those individual people, but then like this baby that's going to come into the world and, all of the generations to follow them. So it feels like this really special time in people's lives to get involved and help.
Yeah, and then you get to help the whole family from there on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about, how does diet affect fertility? Like, for a lot of people, they're probably like, how that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Right? Yeah. Hugely. So actually, it's one of the main things that we look at. There are several, but in both men and women, one of the main components that can get in the way of fertility is inflammation.
Okay.
Right? And there are so many things in diet that can cause inflammation, whether it's just that we're eating way too much sugar, even if we're eating good quality foods, right? Or we're eating really crappy quality foods, and there's just so much in them in terms of chemicals and pesticides and all of those things. We know there's a big impact that pesticides can have. So simply, shifting towards organic can make a big difference. Getting all of the phytonutrients that we need and all of the minerals that we need. So I did this research project where I literally just combed through all the research I could find on PubMed looking at sperm health for men, because it's one of the big issues in fertility right now is that sperm health is declining rapidly. And everything that was coming up was all about nutrient deficiencies. And it's not being talked about. You know, when you go to a fertility clinic, often they're not saying like, well, are you getting enough zinc, or are you getting enough CoQ10 in your diet, and how can you do that? And or do we need to supplement? And but I think for a lot of people, it's just too much sugar and too many inflammatory foods all day long that we're not using that fuel, in terms of how we exercise and things like that.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's talk about inflammation. A lot of people have heard that term.
Yes.
People say it. I talk to people every day I'm interviewing to work with me, and they say, I think I have too much inflammation, but they don't even really know what that means. Yeah. What is inflammation?
Yes. Okay. So what I'll say is that some inflammation is good, and too much inflammation in the long term, not so good.
Right.
So one of the things that we're really talking about when we talk about inflammation is oxidative stress in the body. And what you've probably heard oxidative stress, you might have heard the term free radicals. Those probably also sound big to you too. So think about this. If you heat something up, you actually change the shape of it. And our bodies function on shape. It's like putting the key in the hole, right? Everything has to be the right shape. And when things are the right shape and they fit really well, we have health. When they're the wrong shape, then they can actually do damage. And when you have something that's in an inflammatory state, you create this oxidative stress, which goes around and it's like little bullet holes and everything, right? Okay. It can actually destroy tissue. And we don't want that happening. So when someone's experiencing inflammation, they might feel things like joint pain or headaches, or sometimes it's just fatigue or that kind of flu-like draggy thing, or you just kind of feel like you're moving through mud. Those are all signs that there is inflammation going on in the body. And getting enough of the nutrients to help calm it down can be really helpful, because we actually need some inflammation. And I think this is one of the big misconceptions, that because everybody's like anti-inflammatory everything, right? It's like great, but our immune system actually functions on temporarily creating inflammation. That's how we destroy those bugs, right? We go in and use that inflammation to attack them. We also temporarily use inflammation anytime we have a cut or a wound we need to heal. The issue is that many people in our culture with their diets and their lifestyle are creating a situation where that inflammation can't ever calm down. So you have basically, like I said, like those bullets going everywhere all the time with no ability to like clean up the rubble. Yeah. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people, they know they're inflamed, they just don't know what is going on. And just like we hear, inflammation's bad, we should get rid of it all. Like, same thing. Cholesterol's bad. We should have no cholesterol at all. These are normal processes in the body. They're really important.
Yes.
But a lot of things in the body work with, temporary short-term things are really good in healing, but they shouldn't be that way all the time.
Exactly. Just like we need our cholesterol in order to make every cell in our body function. We need our cholesterol in order to make those hormones to, function through our day, to get pregnant, to do all of those things. So. Yeah. It's our friend.
Yes, yeah. Just too much all the time is never gets the body to repair itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about then, a ketogenic diet or keto approach. Like, how did you stumble upon that?
So Bonnie Nieder, one of my mentors, came to us and said, "You guys have to learn about this. It's become such a powerful tool that she had really dug in and learned about, and as I started digging into it, it's like, okay, well, there's so many aspects to what the ketogenic diet can do for the body. So I decided to try it on myself because I have to experiment before I can send it out to my patients and to read a lot more about it. And one of the things that it can do when done well is it can really reduce inflammation in the body overall. And I say that caveat around one done well because I think sometimes people leave out the good nutrients that come from vegetables and stuff like that and focus on just being in ketosis rather than them getting the nutrition that they need. It can be an incredible detox. So many of the toxins that we're exposed to just from being in our day-to-day life, right? You hear all the reports now about their heavy metals and everything. There's lead, there's mercury, there's, they're literally just in our environment at this point. A lot of those get stored in fat. So what is a ketogenic diet? It's a fat-burning diet, right? So if we're introducing really good, clean, high-quality fats into the body and we're allowing the body to burn what's there, we're actually releasing and getting rid of what is stored with them. Yeah. And so we actually turn over that dirty or contaminated fat that's been storing all those toxins, get rid of it, and then our bodies can function better. So as a detox, it can be really powerful. I already mentioned it can reduce inflammation. It can help with balancing hormones. It can help the digestive tract heal. Many times I see clients who don't do well, like maybe they want to eat more actually vegetarian, but they're struggling, digestively, they can't do that. They go through the ketogenic program, and then afterwards it's like, oh, I can digest all these things that I couldn't digest before, and I actually have more flexibility and more range. It's so great for managing blood sugar and helping control that, which is one of the main reasons that I did it for myself, was like the hangries. I wanted to get rid of the hangries. My partner is always like, oh, you were so much nicer. So you just having people have that metabolic flexibility is huge too. I'm sure there are others I'm not thinking of in this moment.
Yeah. So, what kind of results have you seen with, people that are adopting this or, trying a keto approach for fertility?
Yeah, it's really great. Well, it can be great in both partners, male or female. For men, I find it's really great for helping to reduce that inflammation that we talked about earlier. And also, one thing that people may not know is that when we carry excess fat tissue in our bodies, fat tissue actually produces its own estrogen. It's like its own little organ, and it just makes this extra estrogen. And a lot of the chemicals that we're exposed to in our environment, whether they're from plastics or pesticides, actually mimic estrogen in the body. So in general, both men and women these days are in these somewhat elevated estrogen states instead of being in their own normal hormonal rhythm. So one thing that can be really helpful is A, getting rid of those toxins, B, losing some of the excess fat, right? Because then you're not making extra estrogen in your own body. So it can help regulate hormones in that regard nicely. And then particularly for women who are struggling with polycystic ovarian syndrome, there's a huge connection between the hormonal balance and the cystic ovaries that happen in polycystic ovarian syndrome and insulin. And one of the main things that the ketogenic diet does is it completely shifts how insulin operates in your body and resensitizes you to it if you've developed some insulin resistance or diabetes, and overall just reduces the amount of insulin that your body is producing and needing, which can then shift how the whole reproductive system changes and operates. And so it can be really, really powerful, particularly in that patient group, but I think in many fertility patients for other reasons as well.
Yeah. It's really exciting to have such a powerful approach. And there's a local lady that struggled with PCOS.
Yes.
And also precocious puberty, and had been told her whole life she could never get pregnant, and so she adopted a ketogenic diet and started doing some fasting as well.
Yes.
And her twins just turned 1 year old.
Yay!
And
oh, I love those stories. It's so empowering because it's like we get these messages, I think, often from the medical community that are like sentences, right? Like you can never, or you will always struggle to, or you'll always need to. And they're so disempowering. And so I think finding something like, wow, if I can really give my body what it needs in this way, then it's a total game changer, right? And my body can actually go back to doing what it was designed to do. Which is such an amazing thing, I think, for a person to feel like they have that power over their own life and wellness.
Well, and I just wanted to add in too that insulin is another one of those hormones in our body that people often think of like, well, we should get rid of that as well too. So, but we need that as well too.
Thank you for saying that. It's all in the right amounts, right?
Anything of too much is not a good thing, and also
not enough.
Not enough is important. But most people don't struggle with not enough insulin.
Right, unless they're type 1 diabetic, it's not their problem.
Yeah. So what are some, tips you have for people that are, struggling with infertility, diet and lifestyle?
Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, I think a ketogenic diet can be really helpful. It's not the right thing for everyone, but I think for a lot of people it can be really helpful. But if you were going to go more basic than that nutritionally, it's like cut out the sugar, eat more really great like green leafy vegetables, particularly from the brassica family, which would be like your or your cruciferous vegetables would be like your Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and kale and broccoli, and all of those are so great for helping balance hormones. Lots of good oils, right? We're always talking about in a ketogenic diet, but even otherwise, you need those oils to make your hormones. So, good omega-3 oils from fish are getting, good organic nuts and seeds, your grass-fed beef and, or pasteurized chicken, like just healthy animal fat if you're choosing animal fat. Go organic, just get rid of the pesticides in your life. Those are kind of the starting points with diet. We can get into lots of details. But other aspects, I guess I would say two of the other big things that I see are sleep and stress, which also impact our metabolism too, right? So even if it's not a fertility client, say I have someone that we're doing a ketogenic diet for another reason, I find those are so hugely important. And I don't know how much you see that with your clients, but getting enough sleep and really working on the stress changes our physiology in really powerful ways. And there's a lot of research suggesting that not enough sleep again raises that inflammation. Just being under stress raises our inflammation. And it's not about you have to change everything in your life, it's about how do you respond to that, right? So a lot of the research shows that our health outcomes, you could expose 5 people to the same stressor, right? Maybe they lost their job, or maybe they whatever, maybe they're going through a divorce, whatever it is. It's not the stressor that tends to lead to the health outcome. It is the way in which the person responds to that stressor.
Right.
So, and that can be hard, right? Because we have lots of learned habits around that we think of as, like, they become so automatic that we don't think of them as a choice anymore. So it can be really learning a new skill, and like you have to work out that muscle that you haven't been working out for a long time, right? To actually change that pattern of response. But when we learn how to do that, that can be one of the biggest game changers that I see, particularly in fertility, but in a lot of other things as well. And then I've already mentioned some of the toxicity issues, but plastics are a huge one for fertility because of that that hormonal disruption aspect. And so, the more we can do to have less plastic in our life, which is hard these days, right? So I'm thinking about it anytime I'm buying food. I'm like, okay, what's this packaged in? And making some different choices that are not always about convenience, but ultimately about health.
Well, and little things about, don't cook your food in plastic. Don't heat it up in the microwave in plastic things.
Please.
Well, and something else that's coming up lately, we've got, plastics that are BPA free, but we're finding that
they're full of BPS and BPF, which are worse.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Which is why as far as I'm concerned right now, there's no real safe plastic. So as much as we can do glass or stainless steel or things that have been around a little bit longer.
Yeah. Glass and stainless steel.
I know.
Yeah. So you talked about a ketogenic diet being really great for detox. So I wanted to dive in a little bit about how you support people during that process, right?
Yes.
Because it actually helps the liver work a lot better. But as people are getting rid of that stuff that they've had stuck around in their fat cells for a while, some people have some symptoms that come up.
Totally. And so that's one of the things that I think a lot of people, when they're losing weight, will experience feeling awful in the process. And I think it's one reason why a lot of people will stop whatever it was that was their program that for weight loss and not make it like a long-term thing, because they don't feel good. And If we can get people through that, then it's like, okay, we can see, is this diet working for you or not? So sometimes if people are experiencing that detox, they might experience fatigue, they might experience more joint pain, they might experience that brain fog, some of those symptoms I was talking about before. Couple things that are really important. Don't let yourself get constipated. That's like my number one rule. I write it on everyone's treatment plan. You are not allowed to be constipated while you are losing weight. In general, I don't want you to be constipated, but particularly then, because the body's trying to get rid of waste.
Okay.
And if we're constipated, it's literally sitting in our digestive tract and then reabsorbing into our bodies. We don't want it to recirculate.
Right.
We want it to get out. So that can be, you know, eating. Again, those vegetables can really help because that's your main source of fiber when you're on a ketogenic diet, and a ketogenic diet can kind of inherently be a little bit constipating for some people. Making sure you're drinking enough water, and sometimes I'll have people on a fiber supplement as well to just kind of help flush things out. And magnesium can be really helpful for that too, because it also helps with some of the other detox pathways. So those are like the most basic basics.
Okay.
Exercise can also be helpful. Sweating, I always encourage. So whether that's sweating through exercise, you know, like a good hot yoga class and you're getting your electrolytes in to rebalance, or you're going to the sauna. Our skin.
That sounds wonderful right now.
After this,
we're recording
Carol
this in the end of November in Seattle. It's getting a little chilly around here.
Yes. So our skin is a major detox organ. It's a secondary detox organ, but we have so much surface area that it's really great at getting rid of things if the liver and the kidneys, which are more primary, are overloaded. So sweating is great any way that you can. And then sometimes I will also recommend that people do colonics, just depending on, you know, what's going on digestively for them. That can be a really fast way of helping to clear some things out. Your lymphatic system is this beautiful highway that runs through your whole body and carries both major elements of your immune system and a lot of fatty things that are moving through your body. So when you're detoxing, your lymphatic highways can get a little bit kind of clogged down, and both the sweating in the sauna and the colonic can really help that to empty faster and help people feel better a lot faster. So I've had a lot of clients feel a little bit resistant to that last one initially. I think in this country we don't talk about colonics a lot, or they're considered like kind of way out there and a little scary. Like, and if you don't know what a colonic is, basically you have a little hose that goes into your rectum and you fill your large intestine with water, which causes everything to flush out. And it also allows your lymphatic system to dump in your liver, to dump and flush out.
So it's a roto-rooter for your intestines.
Basically, yeah. And like I said, if it's something that you're new to, it can be a little bit maybe intimidating or sound uncomfortable, but it can be really powerful. And so my clients all the time are like, really? Okay, if you say so, I'll do it. And then they go and do it, and they're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this sooner? So I'm just putting it out into the world that it's maybe not as scary as it can.
Dry skin brushing too?
Yes, is a great one.
And then another one, some people, you know, like a castor oil. I'm just doing this, and she knows.
Like, I know what you're saying.
Castor oil pack, which for some people is like really messy and overwhelming to try to do that, and so then I've had some of them do just a heating pad. There can help a little bit.
My Lazy Man's castor oil pack. So what she's talking about, castor oil is this fabulous oil, but it's a little bit kind of viscous, so it can be a little bit stickier than you think of with a normal oil, which is why she's saying it can get a little messy. Your liver is this awesome organ that does so much of your metabolism and detox, and it's basically this triangle underneath the right side of your chest. So if you follow that line of the ribs down, up the side and across, it actually goes a little bit over here too, but so I have people cover that with a cloth with a couple tablespoons of castor oil on it. Usually it's a piece of flannel, cotton, or wool, but you can use an old t-shirt or pillowcase if it's clean. And then you put a little heat on there, and then you hang out for 45 minutes to an hour. But because that oil is a little sticky, it can get on things. So what I do when I'm lazy, I actually have castor oil in a roll-on deodorant bottle.
I've seen those. You can buy it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just roll it on. I put on a t-shirt that I don't care about because I know it's going to get a little bit oily, and then I just go to bed. And because the heat of the bed, I'll be warm enough to activate it. So that's and you don't have to sit there for an hour and go, okay, did I plan out enough time? And so that's my lazy person.
Oh, okay. So, and then it's not going to get, like, the t-shirt's going to absorb it, so it's not going to get on your bed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what I will say is that, so castor oil works by increasing both circulation and lymphatic flow in the area. So it's going to help bring new good nutrients to whatever tissue it's over and clear out those waste products at the same time. So you can use it over many areas of the body. It's kind of in my first aid kit for all my patients. Like, have this at home because you'll use it for lots of things.
Oh, nice. I'm curious too. So you're talking about, the colon being one of the major detox pathways, and so don't get constipated. But some people, when they start out a ketogenic diet, they have chronic diarrhea, and I know part of that is that the body's not digesting the fat yet, so that can cause that. But I've also wondered about, perhaps, is if the body's not constipated, is that a sign of, like, massive detox that you're having diarrhea?
I think it can be, and sometimes you can tell by, like, this, if it has a really strong smell to it, or if it's really floaty, that'll kind of tell you, like, what's going on in terms of the liver and digestion. Generally speaking, if the liver is going to dump a bunch of stuff that it's trying to get rid of, it can be a little bit caustic, so it can be a little irritating to the intestines, and it can cause diarrhea. So you'll often, sometimes if it's like, wow, like that smell is so rancid and strong, and where did that even come from, and like, what is that color? Like, that's a good sign that it's probably a liver dump. And one thing that can help it to be a little bit less irritating when that happens is including some extra lecithin as a supplement, which basically helps kind of soothe and helps you create bile, so you can absorb the good stuff back in, those good fats. And that'll help you actually, if you're digesting your fats well, you shouldn't have floaty stools. So that can also help you determine, like, is this a digestion issue, or is it is it an issue with the liver dumping? So I think it can definitely be both. And it does actually, the ketogenic diet also changes your gut flora. So sometimes as you're having bugs die in there that maybe weren't supposed to be in there because they're not being fed by all of that sugar anymore, and that can also cause a little bit of diarrhea at times as well. So it should pass, like, if it's what I tell my clients is if it goes on, and we're not talking, if you're having watery urgent diarrhea, like, many times a day, like 4 to 6 times a day or something like that, you want to address it sooner than this. But if it's more just like, it's irritated and my stools are loose, but they're only happening, up to 3 times a day, I would say that should change within 2 weeks. And if it doesn't, then there's probably something else that you need to shift to support your body through it.
Yeah. And sometimes I tell them it's like, that stuff needs to get out somehow, so let it out.
And I have seen sometimes, when someone goes on, it's a big dietary shift, right? So sometimes people will start eating a lot more of something that they haven't been eating previously. And what I do find is dairy is often one of those culprits, right? Because frequently people are eating a fair amount of dairy on a ketogenic diet to get the, because we can get the good fats that way, if it's good grass-fed
and it tastes
dairy,
good.
and it's delicious. And cheese is so handy and fabulous, right? It's like this little packet of goodness. But some people just don't tolerate it. And so I have seen where that's like, that is the cause of a lot of the digestive stuff. And we just say, okay, let's lose the dairy for a week or 2 and see what happens. And it just fixes itself. So that can sometimes be the problem.
Do you find too that then people kind of have their own unique bodies, like, go to detox pathway, right? So for example, for me, about every 10 pounds that I would lose, I would have skin eruptions in the same places.
Yep.
For me, it was on my face I would get some boils, and I would actually my inner thighs I would as well, and then some other places as well where it was like that's another 10 pounds. And so I just thought it was a very odd, interesting thing the way the body worked, where that was where my body decided it was going to let some of that stuff out. So
totally, I think that's absolutely true. And I'm always fascinated, and this is sort of just my like nerding out about it, is like, what does that tell us about the person's body, right? And so I'm always like, well, tell me, like, well, where were the boils? And my patients are like, really?
Yeah.
You want to know?
Is it so? Then it makes me think about like the Chinese meridians, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that can be a part of it. Is the way I think of it is what organs are stressed and overloaded.
Okay.
Right. So in an ideal world, if our liver and our kidneys and our lungs and our digestive tract are really balanced and in great shape, we won't have anything coming out through our skin.
Okay.
Because we don't need that secondary organ to be where we're excreting things, right?
Okay.
Because it's all getting out where it's supposed to
Okay.
be. When those other organs are under a little bit of stress, that's when we start seeing things coming out through the skin. And so then I start paying attention to, okay, it's coming out through the skin, and which Chinese meridian are we on?
Okay.
What part of the body is it on? Does that lean me towards it's more kidney or more liver where we need to pay attention? Plus any other symptoms that you're having at that time. Because sometimes people will go through cycles where it's like, night sweats are one that I hear too, where it's like, I'm getting hot flashes, but they go away in 3 days, and it's just like, yeah, you were just detoxing.
Okay.
Now you're good. Some of the other ones that I hear, I'm just thinking, I think it's more like the location. It's not always boils, people get different rashes, but they'll get all kinds of rashes.
Yeah.
Of weird sorts. And sometimes people will get rashes and they'll go like, I haven't had this rash since I was a little kid. And it's like, right, you're actually healing back to that state, and you're getting rid of stuff that you basically stopped excreting at that point and you stored.
Oh, wow.
So to think of it in that way of like, I love when my patients get rashes because I'm like, yes, you're healing, it's coming out. And they're like, but it's hideous. And I'm like, it will go away, don't worry.
I know we've some friends of mine that done a ketogenic diet, and like in the very beginning we have these like philosophical discussions about like, is the fat in our body, is it first in, first out, or are we burning through fat that's 10 years old now, or are these toxins back from my childhood? And
right, and it's hard to know. I mean, I think some of that is just, but I totally geek out about that too. I'm like, what is it?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think about with that location thing, just because it's popping into my head, is where might the lymphatic system be a little bit clogged, right? So if you're doing your dry skin brushing or something, it might be that you need to focus on the area. So our lymphatic system, I said before, is this highway through our whole body, and it dumps into your cardiovascular system right around here.
Okay.
And most of it drains onto the left side of your body. You have a little quadrant that's just the right side of your body that has a separate entry point into the cardiovascular system. But I think about it like this: if the lymphatic system is a highway and it's full of snow, if you start plowing the snow at the farthest away points from where you can get rid of it, you're going to be pushing that snow with the snowplow, and eventually it's going to get so heavy that you can't push it anymore, and you're going to get stuck. And so what I always tell people is if they're getting a rash in a particular area, it's always in that area. Or if you're one of those people who gets like, you get a mosquito bite and it turns into this big lump, right? It's probably that your lymphatic system in that area isn't flowing well enough, and you actually need to move the area that's between the rash and this point here.
Okay.
Because you need to open that, you need to clear all the snow from that before you can push all this snow into that area. Okay. So you need to unclog it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
And that's why, so some people will be doing you mentioned dry skin brushing earlier, which is where you're gently brushing the whole body to move the lymphatics, and sometimes people are doing it in exactly the opposite order from how you, and they're
Okay.
starting, way far out
Okay.
and clogging their snow out.
Okay. So you should start close here and then work your way toward.
Exactly. You're
Okay.
always moving in the direction towards this. It's basically right under your left clavicle. So you're moving essentially towards the heart always, but doing it in areas where you start closer to the heart.
Okay, because I'd had people start far away, but so we want to clear up the snow.
Exactly.
Close here first. Okay.
Yes, and then they'll get a lot more flow. And
Okay.
They'll be a lot more powerful of a tool.
Yeah, because the symptom that I see sometimes that makes me think that lymph is stuck in people is when they get in the very beginning of a ketogenic diet where they get swelling in their feet and their ankles, and so I have them do things like put your feet up on a wall, dry skin brushing. But now I know to tell them to clean it up here first before they get down there. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think of for that one is that at the very beginning of a ketogenic diet, our mineral balance tends to get disturbed because we start making these ketones and the body's like, I'm not even sure what to do with these because I haven't seen them in so long.
Yeah.
Right? And then we just basically pee them out,
Yeah.
and when we're peeing a lot more, people always come in, I'm peeing so much. Yes.
Yeah.
It's normal in the beginning, but you're losing a lot of minerals with that too. And so I know you always talk to people about like, you have to do enough salt and that stuff too.
Yeah.
But so if you're not getting enough salt or potassium or magnesium, you'll get that swelling also. So that can just be a sign of needing more of those nutrients, and then it should clear.
Okay. Yeah. Usually it's very short term,
Yeah.
and I used to tell them too. That's a good sign that you're doing the right thing because your lymph vessels probably are unhealthy as well as your blood vessels too.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that means things are starting to move, and anytime we do that, right, we're disrupting whatever balance the body has come to, and so there's often there's a period of discomfort that we go through as the body's relearning its new state, right? And it's like, oh, I have to move all of this stuff, and I have to do things that I haven't done in a while.
Another one that people sometimes complain about in the beginning of a ketogenic diet is bad breath. That's another detox location, right?
Yes, yeah. So both in the digestive tract, but the liver again, like you'll get that coming up frequently, and that should clear as well.
Yeah. So just more exercise and breathe heavier.
Tell people, get the fiber, make sure the bowels are moving.
Okay.
Take care of itself.
Nice, yeah. Okay, so what are some tips if somebody's watching this, they don't live in Seattle and they can't come see you, like what are some tips you have about like just getting started on a ketogenic diet, like specifically for fertility? Let's just stick with that.
Yeah, so for fertility, I'm always, in general, I like to keep it simple. I think you do a similar thing in the beginning where it's like, if you're someone who really loves to cook and you want to geek out on finding lots of ketogenic recipes, great. But in general, it's like if you just keep it simple and you make half your plate vegetables and then you have a good protein and a good fat source, again, keeping organic, grass-fed, clean as much as possible, it's a really simple way to do it. It doesn't have to be a big, complicated, scary thing. I think if you're getting to the point where you're having some of those symptoms, right, with brain fog and kind of flu-like symptoms, and they're not clearing quickly, that's a great time to reach out for more help. And whether that's, finding someone who works remotely, both of us do, or finding someone locally in your area who can give you more support around those
That's
things.
right, you do work remote.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there's so many more resources out there now, which is really nice that people can have access to. But set yourself up well. Make sure that unless insomnia is your issue, make sure that you're sleeping and make sure that you're moving every day, because it's going to help so much with, kind of getting through those shifts that your body is making and supporting it and producing ketones to actually feed your muscles and your brain and all of those things. But I think just keeping it as simple as possible. Drink tons of water. You will be thirsty. It's normal. Sleep. And I think the biggest thing is that people sometimes don't realize how much protein and how much fat they need in the beginning. And it's scary for people, right? So particularly if you're thinking about it for fertility, those vegetables are really important, and those good high quality fats are important. They're important for anyone on a ketogenic diet, but the fats are extra important when you're doing it for fertility. And we've been scared, I think, into thinking, like, as a culture, like, fat is bad, right? And so I find often when people are starting out, there's this sort of emotional response to that they have to bust through a little bit, and just reminding yourself that no, you're providing your body not only a fuel for your energy, but a fuel for your hormones and all of those things. And if you're doing it with really high quality, really honoring that it's a gift for yourself, and that it's not some crazy bad thing that you're doing that's going to hurt you. Because I think that is one of the hardest things for people. I don't know if you see that as well, but
a bit. It's a lot of the ladies I'm working with have already tried keto on their own and haven't had really good success. So a lot of them have overcome that, but it's still, lots of people have that fear, right? Like, is this really good? Can I really eat bacon every day?
Right.
Like,
it's high quality. And that's what I think my clientele is often, I'm explaining what a ketogenic diet is to them, and then we're starting at the very beginning. And so they might have a little more of that, like,
are
really?
You sure?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do what you say. But yeah, I think just keeping it really, really simple. It's nice you can actually, I think, really cut down your cooking time when you're on a ketogenic diet. Because it can be so simple, and so giving yourself that time to do something else that feeds you, and and just allowing it to be that simple.
Well, and I'm thinking of some, just talking about some of the myths out there, right? So one of my newest clients started working with a brand new medical doctor, and so she goes in and says that I've started this ketogenic diet, and the doctor's like, oh, I'm not a fan of it, and she says, oh, really, why? And so his objections were, one, that it was not sustainable, that you're just going to gain the weight back when you go off of it. It's expensive, and I'm trying to remember the other one that he said too. But then she said, well, but will it harm me? And he said, no, that's not going to be the problem. So the sustainable thing was really funny, because like the argument that, like, you're just going to gain the weight back when you go off of it is so ridiculous, because that's true of any diet, right? If you go back to your regular eating habits that made you overweight in the first place, yes, you're going to gain the weight back. There's no magic bullet that you just do this for 2 weeks and then you're fixed forever.
No.
So that's just such a silly thing. And people have actually adopted a ketogenic diet. They just know that it's so much more delicious, and they feel full and satisfied, and they're not hungry all the time, instead of eating like a boiled chicken breast and plain lettuce. Like, that's not sustainable.
No, in fact, sometimes I have trouble convincing people to go off of it for when I want them to, for certain reasons. Like, after they've done what I want them to do with it, and it's like, okay, let's branch out a little bit, and they're like, oh, but I feel so good. Like, why would I do that? So
and that's what I find with clinicians out there, because another one of my clients sent me an article that was written by a medical doctor about how bad and dangerous it was and everything. And I said, what I see is that clinicians that have not tried it themselves and are not using it therapeutically, they're the ones that still think it's, dangerous and unsustainable. But then the ones that have actually tried it in themselves and notice how great they feel, and then start to use it with their clients and patients, they're the ones that know all that other stuff is just, hogwash.
Absolutely. And I think it is important to consider, like, what is the long-term plan going to be? And I don't typically, when I'm working with someone with a ketogenic diet, sometimes I will have them on it for months and months, in terms of, like, long-term for the rest of their life. Generally, what I say is, I like people to get as much variety of nutrients as possible, and to have some flexibility in life, right? Like, I talk about health as freedom from limitation, and any nutritional limitations that we provide ourselves within a certain amount, can be sometimes socially limiting. Or so what I generally work with people on is what's the diet that is going to help them maintain the health that they have created, right? And that's different for different people, but it does usually involve some number of days per week of being in ketosis in the longer term. Sometimes it involves 1 or 2 days a week of fasting, of longer fasting, longer term. And actually there's a fair amount of research showing that that's good for our brains, that it's good for, our metabolism, that it's good for our longevity. And I think that's just, it's slower to hit the conventional medical world, and they'll get there. But, I do find that the sustainability myth to be a little bit funny.
Yeah.
It's like, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, how about the one that it's too expensive?
I don't think it has to be that either. I think it can be. I think, like, I certainly allowed myself fabulous luxuries while I was doing it all the time, just because, that was my way of making it fun and giving myself treats, and I felt like I could afford to do that at that point. But I don't think it has to be. I do think the expense can be, and I want this for everyone, not just people who are on a ketogenic diet, is, again, that quality of ingredient, right? It is not just about eat this amount of fat or this amount of protein, but making sure that they're really clean. That's not a ketogenic thing. That's an everybody should be doing that thing. And there is a cost associated with that, unfortunately, right now in this country. Beyond that, I don't think it has to be any more expensive than anything else,
Yeah, well, and the beauty is that you can buy, typically the highest fat animal protein foods are the lowest cost ones, right? So chicken thighs and drumsticks and wings are much less expensive than boneless, skinless chicken breasts.
We always joke about that in our house.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're eating them. Like, why? Yeah. Like, how did this come to be? Because it tastes better.
Well, yeah, and it's supply and demand right now, because people think that's healthier, and so the other stuff is like discounted. Yes. So pretty soon it's going to switch, maybe a switch over the other way around, because people start saying, like, we don't have to eat chicken breast anymore.
And I tell people, cook in bulk, because, that also will save you some money, too. You can, and in terms of the vegetables, it's just finding, like, where can you get those good source organic vegetables easily in your, and I mean, sometimes you're going to the farmer's market, sometimes maybe you're going to the co-op, sometimes maybe you're going to Costco. They have more and more organic vegetable selections lately, which I'm happy about, because I think that makes it more accessible to more people. In our neck of the woods, we have Grocery Outlet, which, like, remarkably sometimes has some great deals on stuff.
Yeah, I think Aldi is one that's like in the Midwest.
Yeah,
that is kind of similar to that.
Yeah. So I think it's just looking around and finding, because it's shifting your thoughts about where I'm buying things, and for me, the other thing that I think about is basically, what am I valuing and where am I putting my money, and for me, health is a huge value, and so I'm going to invest in that, and it might mean that I don't buy as many fancy clothes or whatever, but because that's what I value more. And so would I rather put my money into some really good food and then not have to be on medications later in life and have a great quality of life and enjoy my time here?
Yeah, nice. Well, was there anything else that you were hoping I would ask about, or anything else you wanted to share?
I think that, I guess the one thing that I would say about all of this is that it's really just, there's so much information out there, I think, and I kind of alluded to this before, that it can be difficult to sort through. So, it doesn't have to be complicated. You can get started on it. But do reach out if you're feeling like it's overwhelming, or like, I don't know if I'm doing it right, or my body is responding in this way that I didn't expect. Like, there are people who can help. And I think some people sometimes will go like, oh, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Right?
Yeah.
And it probably didn't at that time. That's why you feel that way. And that doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing. It might mean that there are just some adjustments that you need to make, and maybe you need some support in figuring out what that is, right? Is it that you need to do more detox? Is it that you need to adjust actually what you're intaking? Do we need to look specifically at your glucose levels or your ketones and see what's happening? But there's so much more information coming out all the time. You don't have to be the one to sort through all of that if it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, reach out to people like us who are studying it and learning it all the time, and get some help, because we want you to be successful.
Yeah.
We want you to feel good doing it.
Yeah, nice. Well, I've got one final closing question.
Yeah.
It's your final day on Earth. The meteor's coming at us. We're all getting wiped out.
All right.
What's your final meal gonna be?
My final meal. Ooh. Might not be ketogenic.
That's the fun of this.
I think there would be pumpkin pie involved.
Oh, okay.
And I actually just saw a great keto pumpkin pie recipe that I want to try out. I think there would be pumpkin pie, and there would probably be some steak. I think that would be happening.
Okay.
Potentially wrapped in bacon.
Okay.
And some avocado. It's okay. Maybe it would be. It's like all the really rich foods. Yeah. No, I would want some. I think I'd want some berries in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or some like really fabulous fresh fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any beverage or anything to accompany that, or
maybe a really nice glass of wine. Red wine. What kind of wine? It would be I'm not sure what it would be. I'm thinking about my meal. It would be a really nice red wine.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been really fun,
Thank you.
sharing all this information. It's really good stuff. I know that you have enjoyed this if you watched this. We've got all of Dr. Erin's links below, how to get in touch with her, connect with her. If you've enjoyed this interview, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe thing over there, and that's going to get you all the other interviews that we have coming, as well as hit the little bell. After you hit subscribe, hit the little bell, and that's how you're going to get the notification that there is a new interview out. So thank you all for watching. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks so much, Carol.
Bye now.